Waiter humiliates country singer without recognizing her. What happens next will leave you in tears. The fluorescent lights of the children's hospital cast a harsh glow across Melissa Johnson's tired face as she sat beside her daughter's bed, gently stroking Lily's thin hair. The 8-year-old girl looked so small against the white sheets, her breathing labored from the rare genetic condition that had turned their world upside down 2 years ago. Mitochondrial myopathy, a name Melissa had learned to pronounce perfectly, though she wished she never had to. "Mommy, will you sing the Reba song again?" Lily whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of medical equipment. Melissa's heart clenched. Even here, even now, her daughter found comfort in the music that had become their lifeline. She cleared her throat and began softly, "I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna work harder." The lyrics of Reba McEntire's empowering anthem filled the sterile room, and for a moment, the beeping machines faded into background noise. Lily's eyes fluttered closed, a peaceful smile crossing her pale features. Melissa continued singing until she was certain her daughter had drifted off to sleep, then carefully extracted her hand from Lily's weak grasp. She glanced at her phone. 11:30 p.m. Her shift at Belmead Bistro started at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and she hadn't even begun studying the new wine list the manager had distributed. Walking through the hospital corridors toward the parking garage, Melissa reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. 3 years ago, she had been Melissa Carter, a hopeful 24-year-old with dreams of making it big in Nashville's competitive music scene. She had moved to Music City with nothing but a beat-up guitar, $200, and unwavering faith in her voice. Those first months had been a whirlwind of open mic nights, demo recordings, and networking events where she met other dreamers just like herself. Then she met David Johnson at a songwriters showcase downtown. He was charming, talented, and promised her the world. Their romance burned bright and fast, culminating in a courthouse wedding 6 months later. When Melissa discovered she was pregnant, she thought her happiness was complete. David seemed thrilled about becoming a father, talking excitedly about how their child would grow up surrounded by music and love. But life has a way of testing even the strongest spirits. Lily was born with complications that required immediate medical intervention. The doctors ran test after test, searching for answers while Melissa held her newborn daughter, praying for a miracle. When the diagnosis finally came, mitochondrial myopathy, a progressive condition affecting Lily's muscles and energy production, Melissa felt her world crumble. David couldn't handle it. Within 6 months of Lily's diagnosis, he had packed his belongings and left, claiming he wasn't ready for such responsibility. Melissa found herself alone with a sick child, mounting medical bills and shattered dreams. But instead of giving up, she channeled her pain into determination. If you're enjoying this story and finding yourself moved by Melissa and Lily's journey, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means everything to us, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on how this story resonates with you. Now let's continue with Melissa's incredible journey. Working at Belmead Bistro wasn't her dream job, but it paid well enough to cover Lily's medical expenses and their modest apartment rent. The upscale restaurant catered to Nashville's elite, music industry executives, established artists, and wealthy socialites who thought nothing of spending Melissa's weekly salary on a single bottle of wine. She had learned to navigate their world with grace, even when some customers treated her as invisible. The other servers often complained about difficult guests, but Melissa had developed a different perspective. Everyone who walked through those doors was fighting some kind of battle, she reasoned. Maybe the demanding businesswoman was dealing with a failing marriage. Perhaps the rude teenager was acting out because of problems at home. Her own struggles had taught her that appearances could be deceiving and kindness cost nothing. Her manager, Patricia Wellsworth, was a stern woman in her 50s who ran the restaurant with military precision. Patricia had taken a chance on Melissa when she was desperate for work, and Melissa never forgot that kindness. Despite Patricia's sometimes harsh exterior, Melissa sensed a good heart underneath. "Johnson, you're scheduled for a double tomorrow," Patricia had told her earlier that week. "I know it's tough with Lily's treatments, but we're short-staffed and you're one of my most reliable servers." Melissa had accepted without complaint. Every extra hour meant more money for Lily's care, and she couldn't afford to turn down opportunities. Besides, staying busy helped keep her mind off their challenges. The other person who made her workdays bearable was Carlos Mendoza, the head chef. Carlos was a gentle giant of a man who had immigrated from Mexico 15 years earlier, with his own dreams of culinary success. He had worked his way up from dishwasher to head chef through sheer determination and incredible talent. Carlos often saved Melissa portions of the day's specials, knowing she sometimes skipped meals to save money. "Mija, you cannot take care of your little one if you don't take care of yourself," he would say, pressing containers of food into her hands as she left for the night. Melissa's apartment was a modest one-bedroom on the outskirts of Nashville. She had converted the living room into her bedroom so Lily could have the proper bedroom with space for her medical equipment. The walls were covered with Lily's artwork, colorful drawings of flowers, rainbows, and musical notes. Despite her illness, Lily remained creative and optimistic, finding joy in small moments that reminded Melissa why she fought so hard every day. Their evening routine was sacred. After Melissa returned from work, she would help Lily with her physical therapy exercises, prepare dinner, and then they would have their music time. Melissa would play her guitar and sing, and Lily would join in with her sweet, if weak, voice. These moments made all the hardship worthwhile. Reba McEntire's music had become their soundtrack of survival. Melissa had grown up listening to Reba's powerful vocals and inspiring lyrics, but the songs took on new meaning after Lily's diagnosis. "The greatest man I never knew," reminded Melissa of her own father, who had passed away before meeting his granddaughter. "Consider me gone," spoke to her determination to overcome any obstacle, and "I'm a survivor" had become their anthem of hope. Melissa kept a framed photo of Reba on her nightstand, not as a fan's shrine, but as a reminder that dreams could come true through perseverance. She had read every interview, watched every documentary, and studied Reba's journey from small-town Oklahoma girl to country music queen. If Reba could overcome poverty, industry skepticism, and personal tragedies to build an empire, maybe Melissa could find her own path to success. Late at night, after Lily was asleep, Melissa would sit by their tiny kitchen table with her guitar, writing songs about their journey. She poured her heart into lyrics about mother's love, fighting impossible odds, and finding strength in darkness. Her notebook was filled with half-finished songs that captured their daily struggles and small victories. The medical bills continued mounting despite their insurance coverage. Lily needed specialized treatments, medications, and regular monitoring that stretched their budget to breaking point. Melissa had started picking up extra shifts wherever possible, sometimes working at Belle Meade Bistro for lunch and dinner, then cleaning offices late at night. Her social life had virtually disappeared. While her former friends were out enjoying Nashville's vibrant nightlife scene, Melissa was either working or caring for Lily. She didn't feel sorry for herself. Being Lily's mother was the greatest privilege of her life, but sometimes the isolation felt overwhelming. Dr. Sarah Chen, Lily's primary physician, had become more than just a medical professional to their family. She was a source of hope and encouragement during the darkest moments. During their last appointment, Dr. Chen had mentioned new experimental treatments being developed, but they were expensive and not yet covered by insurance. "Lily is responding well to her current treatment plan," Dr. Chen had explained, "but if we could access these new therapies, we might see significant improvement in her muscle function and energy levels." The cost was staggering, nearly $50,000. Melissa had smiled and nodded, hiding her devastation behind a brave facade. Where would she ever find that kind of money? But she refused to give up. Somehow, some way, she would find a solution. As Melissa finally drifted off to sleep that night, she whispered the same prayer she offered every evening, for strength to face tomorrow, for Lily's healing, and for the courage to keep chasing her dreams even when they seemed impossible. Tomorrow would bring another day of serving demanding customers at Belle Meade Bistro, but it would also bring her closer to finding a way to help her daughter. She had no idea that tomorrow would be the day that would change everything. The next morning arrived grey and drizzling, typical Nashville weather that seemed to mirror Melissa's perpetual state of exhaustion. She had managed only 4 hours of sleep before Lily woke up crying from muscle pain, a common occurrence that required Melissa to administer medication and provide gentle massage therapy until her daughter could rest again. By 9 a.m., Melissa was dressed in her crisp white shirt and black slacks, her hair pulled back in the regulation bun required by Belle Meade Bistro's dress code. She kissed Lily goodbye, leaving her in the capable hands of Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor who watched Lily during Melissa's work hours for a fraction of what professional childcare would cost. "Be good for Mrs. Rodriguez, baby girl," Melissa whispered, tucking Lily's favorite stuffed rabbit under her arm. "Mommy will be home right after work to help with your exercises." Lily smiled weakly, but squeezed her mother's hand. "Sing Reba tonight?" "Always," Melissa promised, her heart breaking a little more at how such a simple request required so much effort from her daughter. The drive to Belle Meade Bistro took Melissa through the heart of Nashville, past the historic Ryman Auditorium, where countless country legends had performed, including Reba McEntire herself. Melissa often imagined what it would feel like to stand on that sacred stage, to feel the energy of an audience, hanging on every word of her songs. The dream felt more distant than ever, but she held onto it like a lifeline. Belle Meade Bistro occupied a restored Victorian mansion in one of Nashville's most exclusive neighborhoods. The restaurant's reputation attracted everyone from country music royalty to Hollywood celebrities passing through town. Melissa had served everyone from Grammy winners to politicians, always maintaining her professionalism, even when faced with demanding or dismissive behavior. "Johnson, you're on the main dining room today," Patricia announced as Melissa clocked in. "We have several VIP reservations, so I need your best performance." Melissa nodded, mentally preparing herself for what promised to be a challenging shift. Tuesday evenings were typically busy, filled with industry professionals conducting business over expensive meals and wine pairings. The maitre d', Gerald Pemberton, was already positioning himself at the front podium with his usual air of superiority. Gerald was 28 years old and had been working at Belle Meade Bistro for 3 years, ever since graduating from a prestigious hospitality management program. His family connections had helped secure the position, and he never let anyone forget his supposed authority. Gerald had a particular talent for reading people's economic status within seconds of their arrival, and he treated customers accordingly. Wealthy patrons received effusive attention and prime seating, while anyone who appeared middle class or below was made to feel unwelcome through subtle but unmistakable signals. "Remember, Johnson," Gerald said with a condescending smile, "we maintain certain standards here. Our clientele expects a refined atmosphere, and we can't have just anyone thinking they belong in our establishment." Melissa bit her tongue, as she always did. She needed this job too desperately to risk confrontation with Gerald, no matter how much his attitude bothered her. Instead, she focused on preparing her section, ensuring every table setting was perfect and every surface gleamed. Carlos emerged from the kitchen with his usual warm greeting. "Buenos dias, mija. How is little Lily today?" "Struggling with pain this morning, but she's tough," Melissa replied, grateful for his genuine concern. "She asked me to thank you for the special soup you sent home yesterday. She said it tasted like happiness." Carlos beamed. "That child has wisdom beyond her years. You tell her Uncle Carlos is working on a new recipe just for her." The first customers began arriving at 5:30, and Melissa fell into the familiar rhythm of taking orders, serving food, and managing multiple tables simultaneously. She had developed an almost supernatural ability to remember complex orders without writing them down, a skill that impressed even the most demanding patrons. Around 7 p.m., the restaurant was nearly full when Melissa noticed an unusual situation developing at the front entrance. A woman had entered alone, dressed casually in jeans, a simple sweater, and sneakers. She wore oversized sunglasses despite the evening hour and kept her head down as if trying to avoid attention. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she carried only a small purse. Gerald's reaction was immediate and predictable. Melissa watched from across the dining room as he looked the woman up and down with obvious disdain, his expression shifting from professional courtesy to barely concealed disgust. The woman appeared to be asking about a table for one, but Gerald was shaking his head dismissively. Something about the woman's posture tugged at Melissa's heart. There was a weariness in her stance that Melissa recognized, the exhaustion of someone carrying heavy burdens. Despite her casual appearance, there was an elegance in the way she moved, a quiet dignity that Gerald was clearly missing. "Excuse me, ma'am, but as I explained, we're completely booked this evening," Gerald said loudly enough for nearby diners to hear. "Perhaps you would be more comfortable at one of the chain restaurants down the street. They're more accommodating to walk-in customers." Melissa felt her stomach drop. She could see at least 3 empty tables in her section alone, and she knew the reservation book well enough to recognize Gerald's lie. The woman's shoulders sagged slightly, and she began to step back toward the door. "I understand," the woman replied softly. "I apologize for the inconvenience." Her voice sent a shock through Melissa's system. Even spoken quietly, there was something unmistakably familiar about those tones, a richness and warmth that Melissa had heard thousands of times through speakers and headphones, but it couldn't be, could it? Melissa moved closer, abandoning her current task of refilling water glasses. As she drew nearer, she caught a glimpse of the woman's profile when she turned slightly toward the light. Despite the casual clothing and lack of makeup, despite the obvious attempt at disguise, Melissa's heart began racing. It was her. It was actually her. Reba McEntire, the queen of country music, Melissa's hero and inspiration, the voice that had carried her through the darkest moments of her life, was standing 10 feet away, being humiliated by Gerald Pemberton. Melissa's mind raced. She knew she should return to her tables, mind her own business, keep her job secure. But she also knew that if she did nothing, she would never forgive herself. This woman's music had given her strength when David left. Reba's songs had helped Lily fall asleep during painful nights in the hospital. Those powerful lyrics about survival and perseverance had become Melissa's daily mantras. Gerald continued his performance, raising his voice even higher. "As I said, Ma'am, this establishment caters to a very specific clientele. I'm sure you understand that we have to maintain certain standards." He gestured dismissively toward her outfit. Perhaps if you had called ahead and dressed more appropriately. Several other diners had turned to watch the scene unfold, and Melissa could see the mixture of curiosity and uncomfortable amusement on their faces. Reba McEntire, though they didn't recognize her, was being publicly humiliated, and no one was doing anything to stop it. The decision crystallized in Melissa's mind with sudden clarity. She thought of Lily, fighting every day with courage that put most adults to shame. She thought of all the times Reba's music had reminded her to be strong, to stand up for what was right, to never give up hope. Melissa straightened her shoulders and walked directly toward the front entrance. "Excuse me, Mr. Pemberton," she said with quiet confidence, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "I believe I have an available table in my section. I'd be happy to seat this lady." Gerald whirled around, his face flushing red with indignation. "Johnson, return to your section immediately. This is not your concern, and you do not have the authority to make seating decisions." Melissa felt every eye in the restaurant focused on her, but she refused to back down. "Sir, table 12 in my section has been empty all evening, and I don't show any reservations for it on tonight's book. That table is being held for potential walk-ins of appropriate standing," Gerald snapped. "Not every person who wanders in here belongs in our establishment. Surely even you can understand the importance of maintaining our reputation." The condescension in his voice, the way he emphasized "even you," the obvious implication that Melissa herself barely belonged there, it all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. She had spent years accepting such treatment, convincing herself it was necessary to keep her job and provide for Lily. But watching Gerald treat her hero, treat any human being, with such cruelty, made something inside her snap. "With all due respect, sir," Melissa said, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent dining room, "every person deserves to be treated with basic courtesy, regardless of how they're dressed. And this lady seems perfectly pleasant and respectful." Gerald's face turned an alarming shade of purple, his composure completely shattered by Melissa's public challenge to his authority. The entire restaurant had gone silent, waitstaff frozen mid-service, and diners openly staring at the unfolding drama. "How dare you question my judgment in front of our guests?" Gerald hissed through clenched teeth, his voice low but venomous. "You are a server, nothing more. You do not make policy decisions, and you certainly do not override my authority. Return to your section this instant, or collect your final paycheck on the way out." Melissa felt her knees trembling, but she refused to back down. She glanced at the woman she now knew to be Reba McEntire, who had removed her sunglasses and was watching the confrontation with a mixture of surprise and concern. Even without makeup, even tired and trying to remain anonymous, Reba's distinctive features were unmistakable to Melissa's trained eye. "Mr. Pemberton," Melissa continued, her voice gaining strength, "I've worked here for 2 years without a single complaint from management or customers. I know our reservation system, and I know we have available tables. Refusing service to someone based solely on their appearance goes against everything this establishment claims to represent. Patricia Wellsworth emerged from the back office, drawn by the commotion. Her sharp eyes quickly assessed the situation. Her most reliable server, standing toe-to-toe with the arrogant maître d', a crowd of fascinated diners, and an obviously uncomfortable woman caught in the middle of it all. "What exactly is happening here?" Patricia demanded, her authoritative voice cutting through the tension. Gerald immediately launched into his version of events. "This server has completely overstepped her bounds, Patricia. She's attempting to override my seating decisions and causing a scene in front of our valued customers. I've already told her to return to work or leave, but she's refusing to follow direct orders." Patricia turned to Melissa with raised eyebrows, clearly expecting an explanation. Melissa took a deep breath, knowing her job hung in the balance, but unable to remain silent. "Mrs. Wellsworth, this lady asked politely for a table. And Mr. Pemberton refused her service based on her appearance, despite having multiple available tables. He spoke to her disrespectfully in front of other customers, suggesting she would be more comfortable at a chain restaurant because she wasn't dressed to his standards. That's absolutely not what happened," Gerald protested loudly. "I was simply maintaining our establishment's reputation. We have standards to uphold, and we cannot allow just anyone to—" "Excuse me," Reba McEntire interrupted quietly, her famous voice cutting through Gerald's protestations like a knife through silk. "I appreciate this young lady's kindness, but I don't want to cause any more trouble. I'll just find somewhere else to eat." Several diners at nearby tables had been listening intently, and Melissa noticed one elderly gentleman lean forward with sudden recognition. His eyes widened as he studied Reba's face more carefully. Then he whispered something urgently to his dinner companion. "Wait a minute," the man called out, rising from his chair. "Aren't you— Oh my God, you're Reba McEntire." The restaurant erupted. Heads turned, phones appeared, and excited whispers filled the air as recognition rippled through the dining room. Gerald's face went from purple to ashen white as the magnitude of his mistake became clear to everyone present. "The Reba McEntire," a woman at another table gasped. "The queen of country music? I saw her in concert last month," another diner added. "She was absolutely incredible." Reba smiled graciously at the growing attention, her natural charisma and stage presence evident even in this awkward situation. She gave a small wave to the excited diners, then turned back to Melissa with genuine warmth in her eyes. "Thank you, honey," Reba said softly, placing a gentle hand on Melissa's arm. "What you did took real courage. Not many people would risk their job to stand up for a stranger." Melissa felt tears welling up in her eyes. Her childhood hero was not only speaking to her, but praising her actions. "Mrs. McEntire, I'm such a huge fan. Your music has gotten me through some really difficult times. When I saw how you were being treated, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing." Gerald stood frozen in horror, finally understanding the catastrophic nature of his behavior. He had just publicly humiliated one of country music's biggest stars, and he had done it in front of a restaurant full of witnesses who were already pulling out their phones to document the incident. Patricia stepped forward, her business instincts immediately taking over damage control mode. "Miss McEntire, I'm so deeply sorry for this misunderstanding. Please allow me to personally ensure you receive the finest table in our restaurant and complimentary service for the evening." "That's very kind," Reba replied diplomatically. "But honestly, I was just looking for a quiet place to grab a bite after a long day in the studio. I didn't expect any special treatment." "Which makes Mr. Pemberton's behavior even more inexcusable," Patricia said coldly, her gaze shifting to Gerald with unmistakable fury. "Gerald, my office, immediately." But before Gerald could slink away in disgrace, Reba held up a hand. "Actually, if I could say something first." She looked around the dining room, her natural performer's instincts taking over as she addressed the captivated audience. "I want everyone here to know that this young woman," she gestured toward Melissa, "just demonstrated more class and integrity than I've seen in a long time. She didn't know who I was when she stood up for me. She risked her job to defend a stranger who she thought was being treated unfairly. That takes real character." The restaurant burst into spontaneous applause, and Melissa felt overwhelmed by the surreal nature of the moment. Reba McEntire was defending her actions, praising her character, and treating her like a hero instead of just a starstruck fan. "Furthermore," Reba continued, her voice taking on the powerful tone that had made her famous, "I've been in this business for over 40 years, And I've learned that success isn't about how you treat people who can help you. It's about how you treat people who can't. This gentleman," she looked directly at Gerald, "needs to learn that lesson." Gerald finally found his voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. "Miss McIntyre, I had no idea who you were. If I had known—" "And that's exactly the problem," Reba interrupted firmly, but not unkindly. "You should treat every person who walks through that door with the same respect you would show me. A person's worth isn't determined by their clothes or their bank account." Patricia nodded emphatically. "Gerald, you're suspended pending a full review of this incident. Melissa, please take Miss McIntyre to our best table and ensure she has everything she needs." As Melissa led Reba toward a prime table by the window, she felt like she was walking through a dream. Other diners continued to steal glances and whisper excitedly, some even requesting photos with the country music legend. Reba graciously accommodated several requests, her warm personality shining through despite the earlier unpleasantness. "I have to ask," Reba said once they were seated, "what's your name, honey? I want to make sure I remember the young woman who stood up for me when it mattered." "Melissa Johnson," she replied, still hardly believing this was happening. "And Mrs. McIntyre, I need you to know that your music has been a lifeline for my family. My daughter Lily and I listen to your songs every night. They give us strength when things get really tough." Reba's expression grew more serious, her natural empathy evident. "Tell me about Lily. What kind of challenges are you facing?" Melissa hesitated, not wanting to burden her hero with personal problems, but something in Reba's eyes encouraged honesty. "Lily is 8 years old, and she has a rare genetic condition called mitochondrial myopathy. It affects her muscles and energy production. She's been fighting it for 2 years now, and the medical bills— well, that's why this job is so important to me." "And you're raising her alone?" Reba asked gently. Melissa nodded, swallowing hard. "Her father couldn't handle the diagnosis. He left when Lily was barely 2 years old. But she's the strongest person I know, and your music reminds us both that we can survive anything." Reba reached across the table and squeezed Melissa's hand. "Honey, you're the strong one. Being a single mother is hard enough, but caring for a sick child while working to support her, that takes incredible courage." "Some nights I sing I'm a survivor to help Lily fall asleep," Melissa admitted. "She says it makes the pain hurt less." Tears gathered in Reba's eyes, and Melissa realized that despite her fame and success, the country music legend was just as moved by their conversation as she was. This wasn't just a celebrity making polite conversation. This was one mother connecting with another, recognizing the universal struggles of parenthood and perseverance. "Melissa, would you be able to sit with me for dinner? I know you're working, but I'd love to hear more about Lily and maybe learn a bit about your own musical dreams. I have a feeling there's more to your story." Melissa glanced around the restaurant nervously. "I should probably check with Mrs. Wellsworth first. I don't want to get in more trouble after what just happened." Patricia appeared at their table as if summoned. "Melissa, take all the time you need with Miss McIntyre. Consider yourself relieved of your other duties for the evening. And Miss McIntyre, whatever you need, it's on the house." As Melissa settled into her chair across from her lifelong idol, she felt as though the universe had shifted on its axis. Hours ago, she had been just another struggling server trying to make ends meet. Now she was having dinner with Reba McIntyre, who seemed genuinely interested in her life and her dreams. But Melissa had no idea that Reba's interest would extend far beyond a single conversation, or that this chance encounter would set in motion events that would transform not only her own life, but Lily's future in ways she never could have imagined. Over the next 2 hours, Melissa found herself sharing her deepest dreams and fears with someone she had idolized from afar for years. Reba proved to be an exceptional listener, asking thoughtful questions and offering insights that could only come from someone who had faced her own share of struggles on the path to success. "You know, Melissa, when I started out, everyone told me I was too old, too country, not pretty enough for the music business," Reba shared over dessert. "I was turned down by record labels, told my voice wasn't commercial enough, and advised to find a nice husband and settle down instead of chasing impossible dreams." Melissa hung on every word, fascinated by these glimpses into her hero's early struggles. "What kept you going when everything seemed hopeless?" "The same thing that's keeping you going now, honey. The knowledge that giving up isn't an option when you have people depending on you and dreams worth fighting for." Reba paused thoughtfully. "Tell me, do you still write songs? Do you perform anywhere?" Melissa felt heat rise in her cheeks. I write constantly, usually late at night after Lily falls asleep, but performing, I haven't had time for open mic nights or anything like that since Lily got sick. Between work and her care, there just aren't enough hours in the day. Would you sing something for me? Reba asked gently. Right here? Right now? Melissa's eyes widened in panic. Oh no, I couldn't. Not here, not in front of all these people, and definitely not in front of you. I'd die of embarrassment. Reba smiled knowingly. Honey, you just stood up to a bully in front of this entire restaurant and risked your job to defend a stranger. Singing a song should be easy compared to that. Before Melissa could protest further, Reba stood up and addressed the dining room. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Melissa Johnson, the brave young woman who reminded us all tonight about the importance of treating people with dignity and respect. Melissa is also a talented songwriter and singer, and if you don't mind, I'd love for her to share one of her original songs with us. The restaurant erupted in encouraging applause, and Melissa felt every eye focused on her with expectant enthusiasm. She looked around desperately, seeking an escape route, but found only supportive faces urging her forward. I really don't think, Melissa began, but Reba placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Trust me, honey. Sometimes the universe puts us exactly where we need to be, even when we don't feel ready. Reba's voice dropped to a whisper. Sing for Lily. Sing for every mother who's fighting impossible battles. Sing for everyone who's ever felt invisible or unworthy. Something in Reba's words struck a chord deep in Melissa's heart. She thought about Lily, probably asleep by now in their small apartment, surrounded by medical equipment, but still dreaming of better days. She thought about all the nights she had poured her pain and hope into lyrics, creating songs that no one had ever heard. Slowly, Melissa stood up, her legs shaking, but her resolve strengthening. This is a song I wrote about my daughter, she announced, her voice barely above a whisper at first, but growing stronger. It's called Brave Little Fighter. She closed her eyes and began to sing, her voice tentative at first, but gaining power and emotion with each line. The song told Lily's story, the diagnosis that changed everything, the treatments and hospital stays, the moments of despair, and the flashes of hope. But more than that, it celebrated the unbreakable spirit of a child who faced each day with courage that humbled the adults around her. As Melissa sang, the restaurant fell completely silent. Servers stopped mid-task, diners put down their forks, and even the kitchen staff emerged to listen. Her voice carried raw emotion and authentic pain that no amount of professional training could replicate. This was truth set to melody, love transformed into art. When the final note faded, the silence stretched for several heartbeats before exploding into thunderous applause. Several diners were openly crying, and Melissa noticed that Reba herself had tears streaming down her cheeks. That was absolutely beautiful, Reba said, pulling Melissa into a warm embrace. That song came straight from your heart, and everyone in this room felt it. You have a gift, honey, a real, genuine gift. An elderly woman at a nearby table approached them with tears in her eyes. My granddaughter has special needs too, she said softly. Your song, it spoke to something deep in my soul. Thank you for sharing something so personal and powerful. Similar comments came from other diners as they prepared to leave, each person touched by the raw honesty of Melissa's performance. Patricia Wellsworth watched from the corner, her business mind already calculating the positive publicity this evening would generate for Belle Mead Bistro. As the restaurant began to empty, Reba and Melissa found themselves alone at their table, the adrenaline of the performance still coursing through Melissa's veins. I can't believe I just did that, Melissa said, laughing and crying simultaneously. I've never performed an original song in public before. I was terrified. You should be proud of yourself, Reba replied. Not just for the singing, but for everything you've accomplished. Raising Lily alone, working to support her treatment, still finding time to write music that moves people to tears. You're remarkable. Melissa felt overwhelming gratitude wash over her. This woman, who could have easily accepted Gerald's apology and moved on with her evening, had instead chosen to spend hours getting to know a struggling server and her story. Mrs. McIntyre, I don't know how to thank you for tonight. You didn't have to do any of this. Call me Reba, honey. And you don't need to thank me. You gave me something precious tonight too, a reminder of why I got into music in the first place. It's not about the fame or the awards, it's about connecting with people, sharing stories that matter, and using our voices to make a difference. Reba reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. This is my personal manager's direct line. I want you to call her tomorrow and set up a meeting. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Melissa stared at the card in disbelief. What kind of meeting? The kind that might change your life and Lily's, Reba said with a mysterious smile. But I don't want to say too much tonight. I need to make some phone calls first, talk to some people, see what's possible. Reba, I don't understand. What are you thinking? Reba stood up and gathered her purse, her earlier weariness replaced by an energy and excitement that seemed to light up the room. Melissa, you have something that can't be taught or manufactured. Authenticity. Your voice, your story, your heart. They're exactly what the world needs to hear right now. She paused at the door, turning back with a grin that reminded Melissa why Reba McEntire had captured hearts for decades. Oh, and honey, I'd like to meet Lily if that would be okay with you. I have a feeling she and I would get along just fine. After Reba left, Melissa sat alone in the empty restaurant, staring at the business card in her hands. Patricia approached with a knowing smile. Well, that was certainly an evening to remember, Patricia said, settling into Reba's vacant chair. Gerald has been officially terminated, by the way. His behavior tonight was unacceptable, and it won't be tolerated at my establishment. Melissa nodded absently, still processing everything that had happened. Patricia, do you think Reba was serious about whatever she's planning? Honey, I've been in this business long enough to recognize when someone sees real potential in another person. Reba McEntire doesn't waste time on empty gestures. If she gave you her manager's card, she has something specific in mind. Melissa drove home through the quiet Nashville streets, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. What if this was all too good to be true? What if she called the number and discovered it had been a momentary impulse that Reba would regret in the morning? She found Lily still awake despite the late hour, sitting up in bed with her favorite book of fairy tales. "Mommy, you're home late," Lily said, her voice weak but happy. "Did something special happen at work?" Melissa sat on the edge of the bed and took her daughter's small hand. "Baby girl, something incredible happened tonight. I met someone very special, and she wants to meet you too." "Who?" Lily asked, her eyes brightening with curiosity. Melissa smiled, hardly believing the words as she spoke them. "Reba McEntire, the lady whose songs we sing together every night." Lily's mouth fell open in amazement. "The real Reba, the one from the CD, the real Reba. And Lily, she thinks Mommy might be able to sing professionally like she does." Lily struggled to sit up straighter, excitement overriding her physical limitations. "Mommy, does this mean our dreams might come true?" Melissa kissed her daughter's forehead, feeling hope bloom in her chest for the first time in years. "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but I'm starting to think that maybe, just maybe, miracles can happen when you least expect them." As Lily drifted off to sleep, Melissa sat by her bedside holding Reba's business card, wondering if she was brave enough to make the phone call that might change everything. Outside their small apartment, Nashville hummed with the dreams of thousands of aspiring musicians. But tonight, Melissa Johnson felt like the luckiest dreamer of them all. Tomorrow would bring answers, but tonight brought something even more precious: hope. Melissa barely slept that night, alternating between excitement and terror about the phone call she knew she had to make. By 6 a.m., she was sitting at her tiny kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at Reba's business card and rehearsing what she might say to the manager. Lily woke up earlier than usual, her face bright with anticipation despite the obvious fatigue from her condition. "Mummy, are you going to call Reba's friend today?" "Yes, sweetheart. But I need you to understand that even if nothing comes of this, last night was still magical. Meeting Reba and having her listen to my song was already more than I ever dreamed possible." At exactly 9 a.m., Melissa dialed the number with trembling fingers. A professional but warm voice answered on the second ring. "Hello, this is Sarah Martinez, Reba McEntire's personal manager. Ms. Martinez, this is Melissa Johnson. Reba asked me to call you about..." "Well, she said there was something she wanted to discuss." "Melissa, Reba has been talking about you non-stop since 7 this morning. Can you come to her recording studio at 2 p.m. today? She has something very special she'd like to propose." Melissa's heart raced. "Yes, absolutely, but I should mention that I'm a single mother, and my daughter Lily has special medical needs. Would it be possible for me to bring her along?" "Actually, Reba specifically requested that you bring Lily. She's very excited to meet her. 3 hours later, Melissa and Lily arrived at the state-of-the-art recording studio in Music Row. Lily was dressed in her favorite purple dress, her thin hair brushed carefully, and despite her weakness, she practically glowed with excitement. Reba met them at the entrance looking radiant in jeans and a comfortable sweater, her famous red hair cascading over her shoulders, but all her attention focused immediately on Lily. "So you must be the brave little fighter I've heard so much about," Reba said, kneeling down to Lily's eye level. "Your mommy told me you're one of the strongest people she knows." Lily giggled shyly, her usual reserve melting away in the face of such genuine warmth. "Are you really the lady who sings the Survivor song?" "I sure am, honey. And your mommy told me that you sing it too, even when you're not feeling well. That makes you braver than most adults I know." Reba led them into a comfortable lounge area within the studio, where Sarah Martinez waited with several documents spread across a coffee table. Melissa noticed other people present as well, men and women in professional attire who looked like music industry executives. "Melissa, Lily, I'd like you to meet some friends of mine," Reba began. "This is Tom Bradley from Nashville General Hospital's Pediatric Research Division, Dr. Susan Clark, who specializes in mitochondrial conditions, and Jennifer Walsh from Children's Miracle Network." Melissa felt confused and overwhelmed. Why were medical professionals and charity representatives here for what she assumed would be a music business meeting? Reba settled into a chair across from them, her expression serious but kind. "Melissa, after you left last night, I couldn't stop thinking about your story. Your courage, your talent, but most importantly, your dedication to Lily despite impossible circumstances. I made some phone calls." Tom Bradley leaned forward with a warm smile. "Ms. Johnson, Reba contacted us about Lily's condition. Dr. Clark has been following the latest research on mitochondrial myopathy, and there are some promising new treatments available through our experimental programs." Melissa's hand flew to her throat. "Treatments? But the costs? We looked into experimental options, and they're far beyond what we could ever afford." "That's where I come in," Reba said softly. "Melissa, I want to offer you a recording contract with my label, not because of what happened last night, but because you have genuine talent that deserves to be heard. Your song moved everyone in that restaurant to tears because it was real, honest, and beautifully crafted." Melissa stared in disbelief. "A recording contract? Reba, I don't understand. I'm nobody. I'm just a server who writes songs in her spare time. Honey, some of the greatest artists in history started exactly where you are now. What matters isn't where you begin. It's the authenticity of your voice and the power of your story." Reba pulled out a contract. "This isn't charity, Melissa, this is business. I believe your music can touch people the way it touched everyone last night." Sarah Martinez explained the details. "We're offering you a 3-album deal with significant advances that would allow you to focus entirely on your music and Lily's care. The first album would feature Brave Little Fighter as the lead single, along with other original compositions." Lily tugged on Melissa's sleeve. "Mommy, does this mean you'll be on the radio like Reba?" Reba laughed delightedly. "If everything goes according to plan, sweetheart, your mummy's songs will be everywhere. And speaking of plans," she turned to the medical team, "tell them about Lily's treatment options." Dr. Clark opened a folder filled with medical charts and research papers. "Lily, we have a new therapy that's showing remarkable results in children with conditions similar to yours. It's not a cure, but it could significantly improve her muscle function and energy levels. The treatment protocol lasts 6 months and costs approximately $47,000. Melissa felt dizzy. That was almost exactly the amount she had been told months ago, the impossible sum that had seemed like climbing Mount Everest. "The Children's Miracle Network has agreed to cover 60% of the costs," Jennifer Walsh added, "and Reba has volunteered to fund the remaining 40% through her charitable foundation." "No," Melissa said firmly, shocking everyone in the room. "Absolutely not. I can't accept charity, not even from you, Reba. Lily and I have managed this far on our own and will continue to do so." Reba smiled approvingly. "I hoped you'd say that, honey. That's why this isn't charity. It's an investment. The money for Lily's treatment will come from your advance on the recording contract. You'll earn every penny through your music." Melissa looked around the room at all these professionals who had somehow assembled to help her family. "This is really happening. This isn't some elaborate joke or dream." "It's happening," Reba confirmed. But there's one more thing. I'd like Lily to appear in the music video for Brave Little Fighter, not as an exploitation of her condition, but as a celebration of her strength. The video would show other children and families facing similar challenges, spreading awareness and hope. Lily's eyes widened with excitement. I could be in a real music video? Only if you want to, sweetheart, Reba assured her. It would help other kids like you know they're not alone in their fights. Lily looked at her mother with determination that belied her 8 years. Mommy, if our story can help other sick kids feel braver, then we should do it. Melissa felt tears streaming down her face as she realized how dramatically their lives were about to change. Reba, why are you doing all this? You barely know us. Reba reached across and took Melissa's hands. Honey, success means nothing if you don't use it to lift others up. You reminded me last night why I fell in love with music in the first place. Its power to heal, to inspire, to create connections between people who might otherwise never meet. 6 months later, Melissa stood on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry, guitar in hand, looking out at an audience of thousands. Brave Little Fighter had climbed to number 3 on the country charts, and her debut album had gone gold. But more importantly, Lily's treatment had been remarkably successful. She was stronger, more energetic, and had even started taking piano lessons. In the front row, Lily sat with Reba, both of them beaming with pride as Melissa performed the song that had started it all. The music video had indeed helped other families, generating hundreds of thousands of dollars for pediatric research and connecting parents facing similar struggles. Gerald Pemberton, the former maitre d', was also in the audience that night. His humiliation at Belmead Bistro had led to deep soul-searching and a complete transformation of his attitudes. He now volunteered at a non-profit organization that helped struggling musicians find their footing in Nashville's competitive industry, using his hospitality experience to create supportive environments for artists rather than exclusive barriers. Patricia Wellsworth had leveraged the positive publicity from that memorable evening into making Belmead Bistro one of Nashville's most sought-after venues, not just for its food, but for its commitment to treating every guest with dignity and respect. As Melissa reached the final chorus of her song, she looked down at Lily and Reba, remembering that incredible night when a simple act of kindness had changed everything. The song's message, that even the smallest person could be a fighter, that love could conquer impossible odds, that hope was always worth holding on to, resonated through the historic venue. Every setback is a setup for a comeback, Melissa sang, the words taking on deeper meaning with each performance. And every brave little fighter knows that love will light the way. The audience rose in thunderous applause, but Melissa only had eyes for Lily, who was clapping enthusiastically despite her condition, her face radiant with joy and pride. In that moment, Melissa understood that their greatest victory wasn't the recording contract or the chart success. It was the lesson they had learned together about the transformative power of human dignity, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the beautiful truth that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the smallest acts of courage. As the curtain fell on what had been the most incredible year of their lives, Melissa knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and Lily would face them together, armed with music, hope, and the unshakable knowledge that every person deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. The story of the garçonette who stood up to injustice and discovered that heroes come in all forms had reached its beautiful conclusion, but for Melissa and Lily Johnson, it was really just the beginning of a lifetime of brave little fighter moments, each one a testament to the power of love, courage, and the belief that dreams can indeed come true.